Welcome to the Aftermath of Sexual Trauma with Shantae Dent. I'm glad you tuned in. You've probably tuned in because you are a survivor of some type of sexual violence, or you have been affected by sexual violation through a family member, a friend, a coworker, or perhaps you have a genuine interest wanting to know, what is this sexual trauma all about? For whatever reason, you showed up and you're here listening, and I'm glad about it. I'm a former certified rape crisis counselor, and what led me to this interest was my own story. I am what we would call back then a victim of sexual trauma. And today I'm here boldly and confidently stating I am an overcomer of sexual trauma. I remember when I felt empty and lost and broken, hurt to the point I did not think I would ever recover. And those memories are my why. Those memories have caused me to go back to the other side from hurt to healed and encourage other people. I remember when I didn't see a light at the end of the tunnel. I remember when individuals would do their best to comfort me, but it wasn't enough. And then I remember the day that I literally felt like I was out of control. I could not take it anymore. I was going to have a breakdown if my situation didn't turn around, if I didn't get better or begin to feel better. And honestly, that's actually when everything did begin to change. And I began to see the light at the end of the tunnel. The aftermath of sexual trauma, what is it all about? Well, let me start by sharing what sexual trauma and sexual violence is, the definition, I'll say. You know, the technical term, let me begin there. Depending on what state you live in, the laws, the rules, that can determine the legal definition. But I like to encompass anyone and everyone who has been affected, directly affected by sexual trauma. And I simply say it is any form of sexual violation that leaves you in distress, that leaves you disturbed. And those feelings of distress and feeling disturbed may not manifest immediately. It could be weeks, months, or even years later where you feel that something was not right about that incident. I'm talking to you, the one who perhaps you've justified the incident and you minimized the incident, only to know deep in your heart it wasn't right. I'm also a member of RAIN's Speakers Bureau. If you've never heard of RAIN, I would encourage you to visit their website. They're an excellent resource. I'll give that little plug in. RAIN, Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network. And their website is simply their acronym RAINN.org. I'm going to refer to their information pretty often, and you can always visit their website for additional resources. And again, I'll tell you a little bit more about them in a little while. But they do an excellent job to helping us understand the different types of sexual violence. So for example, I'm going to read a few here. Sexual harassment, stalking, adult survivors of child sexual abuse, using technology to hurt others, elder abuse, sexual abuse of people with disabilities, prisoner rape, military sexual trauma, to name a few. And I put it out there because I've run into individuals who literally they justify what they experience because they feel like it's not rape, it wasn't violent, they didn't have a gun to my head or a knife to my throat. And I want people to understand that yes, it's horrible if there's that level of violence involved in it. And if that level of violence is not involved in your experience, it doesn't mean you were not sexually traumatized. And I put that out there because, again, so often we hear and we see or we observe different stories and we compare what we hear to our own experiences. And if we hear that an individual went through an array of experiences and we compare it to maybe one account that we went through, and so we kind of minimize, oh well, it wasn't that bad, or wow, they went through something far more horrific than I, so I don't need any help, I'm fine. But I want you, that person who may have had an isolated incident or a situation that happened years ago, again, we try to justify, minimize, or deny those experiences. But I want to encourage you to make it a point that from here on out, from this day on, you will not live in denial. You will not minimize what you went through. You will acknowledge that incident, acknowledge that painful experience, and begin that road to healing and recovery so that you can be restored and live life emotionally healthy, emotionally free. A few statistics, and these are, again, statistics. I always say, the statistics we get obviously are based on, the reports that, have been tracked and for people, who have spoken up and spoken out. But there are many individuals who suffer from various forms of sexual violence and they don't utter a word. So there are many accounts that are not known, and we know that well. But there are a few statistics that I would like to share, and again, to hopefully help someone out there know that what they went through, they're not alone, and it happens to other people, and it is unfortunately in some environments something that we should be ashamed of. But I encourage you not to be ashamed. I do know that shame and guilt is included in the aftermath, but I want to encourage you to disconnect somehow and separate from that shame, and know that it's okay to identify and acknowledge a sexual trauma, a sexual experience that was violating. And again, that is what puts you on that road to recovery. A few statistics, and these statistics also are from RAINN.org. Every 73 seconds, another American is sexually assaulted. 1 out of every 6 American women has been the victim of an attempted or completed rape in her lifetime. About 3% of American men, or 1 in 33, have experienced an attempted or completed rape in their lifetime. From 2009 to 2013, Child Protective Services agencies sustained or found strong evidence to indicate that 63,000 children a year were victims of sexual abuse. A majority of child victims are 12 to 17. Of victims under the age of 18, 34% of victims of sexual assault and rape are under age 12, and 66% of victims of sexual assault and rape are age 12 through 17. And again, I put those statistics out there. We won't spend the entire series talking about stats, but I wanted to again just acknowledge that this is real. I remember when I began to deal with and acknowledge the adulthood acquaintance rate, these statistics were new to me and they were shocking. And if anything, they reassured me that I was not alone. And there's one thing about knowing that you're not alone, that it's highly likely that there's someone that you can connect with who can help you heal from something that you're currently experiencing, because they too have experienced it and gone through their own healing, which is again a huge part of my why. I remember what it felt like. I remember the anger. I remember the shame. I remember the guilt. And I remember the experience of going through a healing journey and being able to smile again and dream again and actually enjoy life. And so I look back on what that experience was like, and I really, my heart aches for anyone who feels as if they cannot experience that same level of freedom. I've spoken with individuals who have been convinced that healing is not possible. But I'm here to tell you that it is. Healing is possible. Healing from the aftermath of sexual trauma, it is possible. And I'm here to serve you. I'm here to encourage you. Throughout this series, we will cover an array of subjects and topics. Tonight, I am touching on a few, but we will go into much more detail as we move on. When I think about sexual violation and a lot of the experiences that I had and the trainings that I've gone through, something that really breaks my heart, a subject matter, is the myths that are surrounded around sexual trauma, rape, sexual harassment, etc. A lot of times, individuals feel as if they wanted it, they asked for it, it was their fault. And I want to dispel that myth. I want you to know, just in case you believed that myth, that there's nothing that you can say or do to cause someone to sexually violate you, to make someone sexually violate you. You may have heard this before, and if you're hearing it for the first time, I'm glad to be the one to tell you that whatever type of sexual violation you endured, it was not your fault. The fact is, when an individual chooses to violate you sexually, they hold full responsibility for their actions. I understand some offenders may do their best to cast that guilt on the victim. For example, if they would have locked their door, I would have never come in and committed this crime. Or if they weren't wearing a certain outfit, it would have never happened. And that's not true. None of that is true. Those are false statements that are used to justify the act. And as you heard in the statistics I read earlier, this is not about, women. It's not a woman's issue. And we do know that the numbers are skyrocket higher for women. And I did state statistics in America. And, the statistics, as we may already know, they vary different country to country. But at the end of the day, it's a crime. And the victim is not to blame. And victims are men, victims are women, victims are children, victims are elderly. And again, my why is not just for a woman. My why is for men, women, and children of any age. My why is for anyone who has been affected by sexual trauma. Because again, I remember the pain. And that's a pain that I would never want anyone to bear for the rest of their life. I'm a firm believer that if you are alive, you should be living and enjoying life. and not enjoying life to, the world's standard and to other people's standard, but what brings you peace? What brings you joy? What does that fulfilled life look like to you? Keep that picture embedded in your mind. And as you go on this healing journey, I want you to know that that's what you're working towards, living a fulfilled life where you are emotionally healthy. and and here's the thing, not emotionally perfect. I say often that we sometimes mistake emotional health for emotional perfection. And if you've been on this earth long enough, you know perfection is not possible. But when you're emotionally healthy, I conclude that you are power packed with the tools and you are equipped with knowing what to do when you are healing from a hurtful situation. When you're emotionally healthy, you know that even in the midst of this pain, it's not permanent. And if I apply the right tools, I can heal from this horrific event and continue enjoying a beautiful life. And again, confidently knowing that you are emotionally healthy and emotionally free. I'm going to talk a little bit about the beginning stages in terms of, again, the aftermath. After the experience, after the act, there are an array of emotions that an individual will face. What I'm going to cover will be, it's information that many will be able to relate to, and it's information that helps us understand our reaction. And there'll be statements that I make and you'll say, I do not agree with that, or no, not me. And that's okay. And then there'll be statements I make and you will say, have you been in my mind? And speaking of in my mind, what I'm going to cover this next step, when I first read it, that's actually how I felt. I felt as if the author of this information was in my mind. Like someone must have told them exactly what I was feeling because they are spot on. So hopefully at least this portion will be something that you can relate to. So what we know about trauma is, and especially when we think about military trauma, we know about post-traumatic stress disorder. And that's simply what we experience after any type of sexual violation. There are a lot of agencies, and I was trained under this term, rape trauma syndrome, which is an acute and long-term emotional reorganization process that occurs as a result of completed or attempting rape, and it lasts for months or years after the actual rape has occurred. And I'm using the term rape again, it's in accordance to rape trauma syndrome. And I also believe that as you listen, you may find yourself in some of these categories, even if you don't identify your situation as a rape. It could have been another form of sexual trauma. And I also feel these are still tools that can better help you understand the aftermath. Rape trauma syndrome, stage 1, acute impact reaction. Ways of showing anger, fear, crying. You're tense. You may even smile or experience restlessness. These are your expressions, or the controlled style is when your feelings are hidden and calm, composed attitude as if you have it all together. Somatic reactions, physical, you experience soreness. Perhaps there was that physical attack there. Skeletal muscle tension, your inability to sleep, you're edgy and jumpy. Their emotional reactions, fear, shock, disbelief, anger, shame, self-blame, confusion. And then I'm going to move on to stage 2, which is the outward adjustment phase. And this phase can last from weeks to months. The emotional reactions, intense fear, anxiety, denial, lost sense of security. Your physical reactions can include nausea, tension, headaches. And then stage 3, depressed phase, which can last days to months and for some people years. These are emotional reactions, loss of self-esteem as defense breaks down, obsessive memories, uncertain about being able to control life and your environment. And then lastly, stage 4, integration and resolution phase, which lasts months to years. Emotional reactions include lack of trust in partners. And this form says men, but it could be women depending on who the offender was. And then you're anxious and depressed when something reminds you of your sexual trauma. Now, clearly I breezed through these stages. Again, with this episode, my goal is to give you an overview of what we will talk about, what I've discussed today, including many other subjects, as well as special guests. This will all be covered in this series. I just wanted to start out being open and honest and vulnerable and transparent, just putting it out there because, again, if you have been victimized by any form of sexual violation, a lot of this information may not be new to you. And for some, it is new if you have chosen to bury it or deny your experience. A lot of this information is new, it's confirming, and hopefully reassuring in a sense that you'll know, like I mentioned earlier, you're not alone. Help is here, and healing is possible. I will continue sharing my thoughts, my experience, additional resources with you because I want to see you healed and whole. I want to see you complete and free. And we'll go deep into some subjects so that you can hopefully be well educated. And as I mentioned, this healing journey, it's a process, and at the end of the day, it is worth it. You may feel stuck right now, and you may feel like things are moving slowly. But as long as you are focused and intentional about your healing, you will get there. I mentioned earlier that I'm a former certified rape crisis counselor, and I don't want anyone to feel as if I know everything. I don't. And my disclaimer is my comments are my opinions based again off of my experiences, my research, my training. I don't want you to feel as if I should replace any professional therapist. But I do hope that you can gain lots of insight, lots of knowledge, and most of all, hope, inspiration, and encourage as you continue on your healing journey. I refer to rain.org, and they are an amazing resource. Depending on where you live, you can contact them and receive information on your local agencies, a local rape crisis center. And you can also feel free to call their National Sexual Assault Hotline. Tonight, you may have listened, or depending on what time of day you're listening to this, you may feel triggered, you may feel angry, you may feel like crying, and that's normal. I do want you to know that 24 hours a day, you can call the National Sexual Assault Hotline at 1-800-656-4673. RAIN also has an online chat available. And so if you need to talk to someone, you give them a call. Again, that's RAIN, Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network, RAINN.org. I live in the state of Georgia, and our coalition is Georgia Network to End Sexual Assault, Janessa for short. So if you're here in Georgia, Janessa is another amazing resource for you. GNESA.org. And these organizations are able to offer you support. They are also in connection with other resources and organizations, local organizations, and they will provide the contact information so that you can receive a local support. And speaking of support, the healing journey is not always easy, and I believe support is essential. I had a circle of support. My circle of support was small, but I had people in my corner. I had a rape crisis counselor, a therapist, family, and friends who were rooting me on and supporting me as best as they could. And I would encourage you, if you're comfortable, to reach out. If it's a counselor, a trusted family member or friend, a mentor, a support group, and again, a rape crisis center or hotline. And that way you'll be able to have someone to lean back on in those moments that you need to talk and reach out. You'll learn more about me, but I'm an avid journaler. I know some people stray away from journaling because they can't stand writing, but I'll tell you something, when you journal, and your journal doesn't have to be full sentences, it could be bullet points, it can be messy, it can be out of order, but writing down what you're feeling, the good, the bad, and the ugly, it's something powerful and refreshing. There's a release when you're writing it down, getting it out of your head and from your thoughts, from your mind onto paper. So I encourage you to journal, and maybe you want to journal after you listen to this segment. Journal your thoughts about what you heard. Journal your thoughts about what you're expecting. Journal just your questions. It's whatever comes to your mind. You may, again, any emotions that come up, journal about those feelings. And I would hope that you would continue on this journey. And if you run into a space where you're feeling uncomfortable or angry, it's okay to press pause. It's okay to take a breather, drink a glass of water, stand up, exercise, walk around, stretch. It's okay. And you may not want to hear this part, but some people want to just, I want to be better now, and I want to be better tomorrow. I want to be better next week. And you know, I don't deny the power of miracles. I don't deny that at all. And I also know the importance of being realistic. And so if there's weeks that pass and you still feel hanging there, months pass and you're like, why am I still going through, hang in there. Our next segment, we're going to talk about triggers. We're going to talk about those thoughts, those memories, and we're going to talk about creating a plan and having a toolbox and how we can be better equipped when those moments come up. There's so much that we're going to cover, and I commend you for tuning in. You are strong, you are courageous, and most importantly, you have made a decision that your painful past will not control you. You are going to take control. Take back that control. You are going to be empowered to live life. There's so much more available for you, and it gets better. I tell people all the time, like, we can live life in our current state, just heavy with baggage and painful memories and painful experiences, and drag all of that with us everywhere we go, to school, to work, church, home, and take everything with us and have the residue of every horrible experience. We can do that and somewhat function. But I tell you, there is nothing like being able to release that baggage and heal from those painful experiences and live life free.